Michael spent 20 years paying a mortgage. Chris spent 20 years paying rent. By the end of the story, one of them would feel like a genius. The other would wonder if they got it completely wrong. The problem is, it wasn't obvious which one was which, because 20 years later, both of them thought they had won. And when we finally do the math, you'll understand why. Meet Michael and Chris. They're both 28 years old. They live in the same city. They both earn $75,000 a year. And after years of working and saving, they both managed to save $60,000. Financially, they're almost identical. Then they make one decision that changes everything. Michael buys a house, Chris keeps renting, and for the next 20 years, we're going to follow both of them. Not opinions, not internet arguments, not what some random finance influencer says online. Actual numbers, actual costs, actual results, year zero. Michael finds a house he loves, 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, small backyard. The price? $300,000. He puts down $50,000. That leaves him with a mortgage of $250,000. But here's the first thing nobody talks about. The down payment isn't the only money you need. There are inspections, legal fees, lender fees, closing costs. By the time everything is finished, Michael spends another $10,000. So before he even gets the keys, his entire $60,000 is gone. Now he has a 30-year mortgage at 6.5%. His monthly mortgage payment comes to about $1,580. But that's not his real housing costs. Property taxes cost him about $250 every month. Home insurance adds another $120. And he sets aside around $250 every month for maintenance. That brings Michael's total monthly housing cost to about $2,200. Meanwhile, Chris rents a similar house nearby. His rent is $1,700 a month. No property taxes, no home insurance, no maintenance fund. That means Chris spends about $500 less every month than Michael. And instead of spending it, he invests it. Every month. He also invests the entire $60,000 he didn't use to buy a house into a simple index fund, averaging around 10% a year. And just like that, the race begins. 2 years later. Michael's house has increased in value. It's now worth about $319,000. His mortgage balance has only fallen slightly to around $244,000. That leaves him with roughly $75,000 in equity. Not bad. Meanwhile, Chris's investment account has quietly grown to around $87,000. For the first time, the renter is ahead. Not by much, but ahead. The first few years were pretty uneventful. Michael paid the mortgage. Chris invested the difference. Then year 5 arrived. By year 5, Michael's house is worth about $348,000. His mortgage balance has fallen to around $233,000. That gives him about $115,000 in home equity. Meanwhile, Chris's investment portfolio has climbed to roughly $145,000. The gap is getting larger, and Chris is still winning. But something else is happening. Rent. That original $1,700 rent has quietly increased to almost $2,000 a month. Nothing dramatic, just a little higher every year. Meanwhile, Michael's mortgage payment hasn't changed. Then something happened that Michael didn't expect. His water heater died. Repair cost? About $1,800. Not enough to ruin him, but enough to remind him that owning a house means every problem belongs to you. Chris heard about it and laughed. When something breaks in Chris's house, he sends a text. When something breaks in Michael's house, he opens his wallet. But neither of them changed course. Michael kept paying the mortgage, Chris kept investing. And that's what matters. If you're enjoying these real number breakdowns, subscribe. Year 10. Michael is now 38. His house is worth around $404,000. His mortgage balance has dropped to roughly $209,000. That leaves him with almost $195,000 in equity. Nearly $200,000. Chris's portfolio? Around $285,000. He's still ahead. But now his rent has climbed to around $2,300 every month. And for the first time, Chris notices something. His housing payment keeps going up. Michael's doesn't. The difference that once felt huge is starting to shrink. A few more years pass, nothing exciting happens. Which is exactly the point. No lottery tickets, no secret business opportunities, just consistency. Michael keeps paying. Chris keeps investing, month after month, year after year. And while both of them are busy living their lives, their money is quietly doing its own thing in the background. Then year 20 arrives. Michael is 48. Chris is 48. Michael's house is now worth about $543,000. His mortgage balance has fallen to around $136,000. That gives him roughly $407,000 in home equity. More than $400,000, just sitting there inside the house. Meanwhile, Chris's original $60,000 has had 20 years to grow. Add 20 years of compounding, and his portfolio is now worth roughly $760,000. Not $400,000, not $500,000, $760,000. On paper, Chris wins. The renter has more money. Case closed, right? Not exactly, because Chris still rents. After 20 years of rent increases, he's now paying more than $3,000 every month just to stay in the house. Michael? He only has 10 years left on his mortgage, and eventually that payment disappears completely. Chris's never does. Then there's something else, liquidity. If Chris needs money tomorrow, he can sell part of his portfolio. Michael can't sell 10% of his bedroom. Home equity is wealth, but it isn't easy to spend. Then again, Michael has something Chris doesn't: control. Nobody can raise his rent. Nobody can decide not to renew his lease. Nobody can force him to move. Chris ended up with more money. Michael ended up with more certainty. And that's why this argument never has a clean answer. Because both decisions worked, but only because both men stayed disciplined. If Chris had spent the difference instead of investing it every month, he probably loses. If Michael had sold the house after only a few years, he probably loses too. The house didn't make Michael wealthy. His consistency did. The stock market didn't make Chris wealthy. His consistency did. The real math isn't renting versus buying. The real math is discipline versus distraction. Give a disciplined person either path, and they can build wealth. Give an undisciplined person both, and they'll probably find a way to lose anyway. So if you had $60,000 today, which path would you choose?